I'm here with Doge from the Outlaws, new signing after a pretty clear victory. Also, with your team having laid out a good path towards Toronto. And of course, we wanted to kind of catch up with you, or rather, you know, see your introduction to the Overwatch League, how it happened, how you're finding it, what you think will happen for you in the future. So, thank you for agreeing to this interview. And I guess we should start with the very beginning, which is how did the Outlaws approach you?
So actually, what happened was in the very beginning, I was trying to look into collegiate opportunities in Overwatch, and there was a team in Houston called the University of St. Thomas, and they basically approached me and asked me if I wanted to play with them for a bit, and so I scrimmed here and there, and then I found out that they actually had like a boot camp. They were partnered with Outlaws, so we had like a boot camp where the coaching staff would help us in our scrims for a week, and the players would go to the facility and sort of like work together with the Outlaws. And so I basically met Junkbuck through that, and he saw me in that, and I asked him if he would keep me in mind for the future, for scouting or for picking on the main team, and he basically said he'll keep it in mind. And then half a year, 9 months later, he reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to trial.
Did you leave an impression at that event?
At the boot camp?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was collegiate scrims, so it's not like the level is as high as ours by any means. So I think it's just leaving a good initial impression, but it really came down to the actual trial performance for the main team more than anything.
Did you find that you performed well in those?
No, the first one is actually horrible.
Okay.
Like, I think that was my worst performance in a very, very long time in any sort of scrim, because it coincided with some IRL stuff, and so I showed up to the block, and I was so dead tired, and I had just gotten back from doing a lot of IRL stuff, so I had to take a double scoop of pre-workout for the block, and basically I was like I couldn't even hold my mouse because I was just like shaking, my hand was shaking, and I was super hyper, and I just couldn't play right at all. And I think it really messed up my chances with the Outlaws initially, but they gave me another look a month or two later, and I just played like myself, and from there on, it went very, very well.
Right. How do you generally cope? Because there's a pretty sizable time zone difference between, Texas and presumably CET you are on, right? Central. Is it 8 hours?
7 hours from Central.
7 hours, right? Yeah. How do you cope with that situation?
Pretty degenerate. No, I wake up at like 6-7 p.m. every day. I like an hour before scrims, and then I do my morning routine. Then I show up for my scrims, and then I eat, and then I go to the gym. I'm very fortunate that we have like a 24-hour gym. So right after scrims, I usually go at for me, midnight, 1 a.m. I go to the gym, and then I come back and I practice and whatnot until 6 a.m. And then I start going to bed.
Very soon, that's going to mean you have 0 hours of daylight, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Every winter, I see no sun, but that's just part of the grind.
For sure. Now, how have you, Jenny, found the team atmosphere? And also, is there any way for you to connect, considering you're the only one remote?
I think it's very difficult because, there's a time zone difference, and the fact that I'm just not there physically, and that makes it really hard because I'm basically missing out on all the everything outside of scrims. I'm missing out on, except for Waterbury, of course. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm just not there for, and obviously I can't bond with the team in IRL, and I don't live with them or anything. And there's also the added factor of the language barrier between me and the Koreans. They, of course, they speak English, but it's not like we can we hold conversations outside of scrims or anything, and so I don't really get to see them very much outside of the team practice, and I'm very very jealous of Lep, who actually went to the facility, and it seems like he's having a very good time, and I really wish I could come to the facility as well as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Have you gotten close to anyone on the team, like just like through chats maybe, or in Skype calls or whatever it is?
Actually, Bischu is like,
Okay.
I'm very very big fan of Bischu. I love him with all my heart because he's like the nicest manager, and he takes really good care of me. And I don't think I've ever worked with a manager who seems to care so much and be so productive and just be like a really good guy. So he helps me a lot, and he encourages me in scrims and whatnot, and helps me as much as he can. And I really appreciate him.
Has he kept up on tech knowledge?
He's tried.
Point taken. All right, all right.
Like some suggestions here and there, but like nothing crazy on the coaching side. But Junkbuck and Jake are very, very excellent and capable in that regard, so we're not really lacking at all. It's quite all right. And Dante also is watching. If I'm scrimming, then Dante's watching, and if Dante's scrimming, I'm watching. So it's like a back and forth. We can always help each other out.
For sure. Now you mentioned that you find both Jake and Junkbuck extraordinarily capable. My general understanding is that especially Junkbuck has just an extremely high level understanding of Overwatch. Like that they're the head coaches that are basically, the team culture creators first and foremost. They probably know all the ability names. They probably have a pretty good understanding of how Overwatch works. The deep strategies usually come in then from an analyst or an assistant coach. My understanding is that that's not the case with Junkbuck. He probably has a pretty good understanding, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're both really, really smart. And so I think it's more like, I wouldn't say one is doing a whole lot more than the other. But again, like, I don't see behind the scenes very much since I'm not there in person. But when I'm listening to scrims, it's a lot of like, Junkbuck will get some initial feedback, maybe come with a few ideas or set what we should have done different. And then Jake can also, he also pitches in with, I think we should have done this instead, or why don't we just try doing this or this? Like they're both trying to innovate and constantly look for things to improve on.
How much player input is considered then in the strategies do you find?
Say again?
How much player input do you think is generally considered in like making strategies? Because we know, like for instance, teams like Atlanta are probably more player led than other teams where the head coach, dictates strategy top down more. Where do you think on that spectrum does the Outlaws fall?
I think they're very good at. So they will come with their ideas, but they will always ask, "What do you think about doing this?" Or "Do you think you could just do this instead of this?" And then you have the chance to say yes or no. So they're always like keeping you in mind instead of just like hard forcing their own vision of the game. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Makes sense, yeah. Now you mentioned that you found there were some, obstacles to overcome in terms of the comp structure, just because it's a hybrid roster, and of course, like there's a language barrier to a certain extent. How have you managed that? And can you explain? Because it feels like you're one of the newer guys to this language barrier issue, and it's most of the time it's easier to learn what the problems are from someone that's new to the thing, rather than the guy that has mastered it, like Dante, for 4 years playing in hybrid rosters, right? So what's your general understanding of the problem, and how do you fix it?
And the rule of thumb is just to keep everything simple and try to convey your message with the simplest and the fewest words as possible. Like, if you want to hold the choke, you don't say, "Let's hold the choke." You just say, "Go choking" or "choking," right? Stuff like that. You just boil it down to the simplest essence of the words you're trying to convey, right? So, I mean, that's just the rule of thumb you have to keep in mind all the time. And then, especially in the beginning, it was like there was one block where it didn't go that well, and then after the block, it turned out that me and Lep have been using like some words that the Koreans didn't understand, and that's, I think, when it really made me realize that like this is not at all how I'm like used to it, because I've been on like a lot of European and NA teams, and on those teams, I've never really had like any big like issues with what words I can or can't say. So, but it's not that hard once you're in the mindset. It's just like first off, for the first week or so, it takes some getting used to.
Sure. Now, another challenge that you're facing, and we are pretty familiar with in terms of the Overwatch League, and maybe even more familiar with your particular position, considering, I mean, for instance, the Spitfire played last year completely on ping. We know what the transformation of Hardy looked like when he finally got off ping, and of course, it's probably unfair to, say this improvement was all based on ping, but it's probably also fair to say that some heroes are pretty disadvantaged on the tank position playing on ping. So how have you found playing at that ping range?
Given that I've played NA contenders for, I think I started playing NA contenders maybe a couple of years ago at this point. So I've done it quite a fair amount of times on quite a few different teams, so it's not like it's foreign to me. But I do think ping is a bigger issue than a lot of Western players make it out to be, especially NA players. They don't really think it, like 130 ping is usually what you have, or at least what I have, 130, 120 ping, and people are just like, well, that's not really a big difference. Like if you're bad on that ping, then you're bad on normal ping, or like if you're good, then like it goes both ways, right? But I think, especially for me, I don't know. I like to play ball a lot, and I think ball is difficult on ping. Because there's like some things that are like really, really stupid that you can't do on ping. Like on ping, if two balls roll into each other, only you get booped back, and their ball just keeps going, and it actually makes quite a bit bigger difference in some situations that people just don't think about, and just stuff like that. It's like minor stuff, but when it's constantly happening, it like leads to a bigger picture of being at a disadvantage.
How is Junker Queen on ping?
See, I wouldn't really know because I haven't played her on not ping, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it makes that big a difference.
Okay,
but I wouldn't really know.
That's interesting, though. Okay, because there are some teams that have a rather different strategy in how they divide or come to the solution as to who plays a certain character, and there are disadvantages and advantages to the approach. But some teams will split playtime, and I think that generally happens also more so in the APAC region for particular players on a particular hero, and just really figure out who's going to take over that role. Others completely delegate it and say, okay, seems to be something more down, the alley of this player. Or in order to keep it fair and have everyone have an understanding of what they are there for on the team, we just divide the hero pool. For the tank role, it feels like there's a certain benefit to one player playing a lot. So how did you decide that Dante was going to be the Junker Queen player?
I think the general consensus we had with my initial pickup was that I'm the main tank pickup, but it's not in particular the Junker Queen that they probably want me for. And I think we all kind of agreed that Dante is the better Queen player, and how much of that is ping and how much of that is just like him being more experienced and having better mechanics. Maybe I couldn't really tell you, but I think I had like the first week to play, and that really helped me because it was a lot about getting used to the mindset of being an OWL player, where like I think it's very different from contenders, because in OWL you have to kind of perform 100% all the time in scrims and like wherever you go, whereas in contenders you could get away with just scrimming and kind of taking it easy and not giving it your all the time. And so that first week really helped me understand that mindset and kind of get used to it and get the nerves out of the way. And then after the Nixel match, I think, and this in my opinion, it was also the right decision, was like putting our efforts into Dante, because there's not really any point in putting like 50-50 resources into players when one is better, right? You have to do what's best for the team, and it puts me in a position where I get to study Dante a lot. I get to watch his POV every day and kind of see what works and what doesn't work, and I can come on feedback, and it sort of just like allows me to take it easy and like learn a bit rather than just being like thrust into the position.
For sure. Now, it also feels like Junker Queen is more of an off-tank hero in terms of like who would cover it if it's maybe even a DPS hero. Because if we look across other teams, I mean, for one, there's Dante playing it for you. There's Mirror playing it. There's Dia playing it. And in terms of the off tanks, I mean, Hanbin is playing a great one. Void, these guys seem to be. It seems to be generally more a hero that is not picked up by the main tank player, right?
Actually, I had a scrim where I was watching Dante, and then it kind of clicked for me that I think you don't really play Junker Queen as a main tank. You play her more as I think, and I can only speak for myself in this. I had like the subconscious mindset of like a Ryan player when I was thinking about holding space on Junker Queen and what was good and what wasn't good. But then, watching other people, I think a lot of people utilize the range more, and I think that's kind of what makes a big difference between like main tanks and other people in Junker Queen is that they think about space differently, and I think in this case it does not favor the classic main tank mindset.
Right. Now, of course, there's been a lot of controversy around this particular meta. I think there's some things that are a bit nasty about it in terms of the bugs, for instance, but also the way it plays and how goatsy it plays, I guess, has been like a point of discussion in the community, and it feels like we're flip-flopping in terms of the community's perception. We've heard some player input on how they like it. I'm thinking of Rainer. How do you like it?
I don't like the meta, but I think the primary issue with it is that it's so good that you cannot play any other comp realistically and win consistently. And I think that really kills a very large part of what's good about Overwatch. And watching Overwatch is that every team has a different identity in how they play and what they play and different skill sets and whatnot. So, especially like, for example, we have like the Chinese teams who like to play a lot of ball, or we have some rush teams in the West, or, stuff like that. And now it's everyone forced to play the exact same thing, and you cannot go anything. And it becomes really, really stale after like the first couple of days, and then you don't really want to play or watch it anymore. I don't mind the comp in and of itself that much, because it's kind of like, it's very reminiscent of a dev ball comp, and it's like very teamwork reliant. And so like learning to work together and doing every action together and stuff like that and timing correctly, it feels really good. But once you have to do it every single map and every single scrim every single day, I think you just hate it no matter what comp it is. At least that's how I feel about it.
I feel like part of me, seeing how developers try to make goats not viable by certain balance changes, has the fear that whatever balance changes coming down the pike, we might not be able to get rid of it in time for either stage 4 or the season playoffs. What do you think needs to happen to Junker Queen or the composition in general to be less viable and open up more options for teams?
Junker Queen.
And how would you do that?
Good question. I think her shout is really, really overtuned because it gives you speed and it gives you armor, and it lasts like 4 seconds. I think it's a bit much. It's like a rally off cooldown, kind of a little bit. I think reduce the armor and or the speed and duration. Like maybe keep the armor and remove the speed and make it like 3 seconds long. Maybe it'll be a bit better that way, but like there's just way too much of everything at the moment. So I think maybe one part of it needs to be removed and the other parts just need to be nerfed in numbers. And also, especially considering that overheal doesn't give you ult charge anymore if you shoot someone who has like the bonus ult. I think that's also really stupid.
Yeah. Now, okay, let's switch gears because I mean there are a couple of matches ahead for you guys to be played. It seems like you probably only need to win one more match.
Yeah,
You
I
have
think so.
Atlanta coming up, and then I think next week is Washington.
Yeah.
Which team do you think is more likely that you guys get to beat them?
Washington. And I say that because Speedley's playing now, and I think Speedley is really, really talented, and I think it will help Atlanta a lot to see him play. I think he's been out for a very long time, so now that it's finally happened, I think Atlanta will definitely be a lot even more solid than they were already.
They had some struggles early in this meta, right? Does he just solve those?
Well, I mean, they also got Vigilante, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's also that. I think Vigilante is capable on his role. I think that's a very good addition as well. So him and Speedily kind of come together. I just think Speedily is like the bigger part of this because I think he's incredibly talented.
For sure. I heard someone say that for their money, the best Junker Queens in the league right now is actually, I think the names mentioned were Mirror. I forget the third one, but the other one was Hawk. Would you say like Hawk plays a very good Junker Queen as well?
He's solid for sure. I haven't really watched Vancouver, so like other than today, so I'm unsure. But Hawk is solid, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anyone else in mind where you like if you had to study Junker Queen, who would you be looking at it right now?
Dante.
Right.
I like Dante a lot. I think he's very, very smart and hardworking. So I think it's a pleasure to work alongside and learn from him.
I think the other guy brought up was Hanbin. What do you think about Hanbin on Junker Queen?
Yeah, I can see why people would say that at the very least.
Yeah. Now, of course, like one out of the two matches need to be won. I think there's even a small chance that you still make it, even if you win none of them, because 2 and 4 could theoretically qualify. That sounds like it's likely that you guys are going to make it to Toronto. Are you going to make it to Toronto physically?
Yeah, I have the visa thing already, so I'm ready to go for Toronto, and then also the next LAN after that should be the plan.
Right.
But just not facility, from what I understand, unless I get visa in time.
Is that something that you find important to your Overwatch League experience, that you get to play offline?
Yeah, I mean, getting off ping is a big thing, but also just it's very like I'm used to just sitting at home and just not really having like the team environment around me outside of Scrimmar. So I think it's a big like lifestyle change that you also have to get used to.
What if you had to explain to someone why you chose this grind? What is the penultimate experience that you want to have? Is it play in front of fans? Is it just to be among the best and compete for the league title? What is it about your pro career goals?
I think it's about improvement and the teammates that you work with along the way. I think learning to work with other people and like building friendships with them and succeeding with them is a very, very rewarding feeling. I think when I'm on a team, I kind of like shut out most of the world and just like my team becomes my world. And even though I can't talk to Outlaws like very much outside of scrims and stuff, they are still like they're the first thing I think about when I wake up and like the last thing I think about when I go to bed, right? And everything I do and all the work I do is to be best for them and to give my best performance for my coaches constantly. I think that's what's most important about Overwatch for me.
Then we wish you the best of luck in your preparation, that your passion keeps you going through the challenges of time zones, ping, and everything, that you make it to Toronto, and we thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much for having me.